Is this mic on? Hey, okay, it came on then. Hello, everyone. Woo. Yeah. Welcome back to another incredible workshop. This one's going to be off the chain. I'm so stoked to introduce our speakers for this afternoon. Professor Kathryn Gilbey. Kathryn. Yeah. Come on. Respect where it's due, please, people. Respect where it's due. Kathryn is an Aliyawara with close kinship and family ties across Central Australia. Professor Gilbey is an experienced academic and researcher specialising in First Nations knowledges, inclusive education and critical race theories, and is a incredibly staunch and generous teacher and leader here for all of us. Barb Shaw. Barb is a descendant of Kaditch, Aranda, Walpri and Warramungu people. She lives at Mount Nancy Town Camp, which is a prescribed area since 2007 under the Northern Territory emergency response, the intervention. Barb was one of the main spokespeople in the fight against the intervention and has continued absolutely tirelessly in her advocacy and really, what's the word? The legend. Barb is the Deputy Chair of the CLC, Chair of the Aboriginal Investment NT, Director of, and please excuse my pronunciation, Iniwantana Aboriginal Corporation, and a founding member of Aboriginal Housing NT. So I'll give the stage to these teachers and leaders.
This is what happens when we get too close, see? There's feedback, it's too powerful. It's too strong for you, Karen.
See, that's power to the women for you.
Yeah. Well, everyone, again, I'd just like to say that it's my great honour to walk and talk on Central Aranda land. And my tribe is like northeast. So Aranda, Mamatra, Kaditch, then Oyoda is like the purple one on the map. Up into Queensland. Yeah, I know, neighbours we are. But and to earn my livelihood on this land that's never been ceded, that, you know, is really culturally and linguistically really strong. And you can feel the power of that country. Again, for Felicity and her incredible generosity in making sure that we're okay as we participate in this kind of forum, by smoking us, by welcoming us. So it's like from a place of gratitude that I come and am speaking today. We're going to be talking about the intervention. So we're just going to tell some stories, and then we're going to kind of just do a little bit of a workshop about how much people know. Oh, she told me to. How much people know. It's hard. You can get in this kind of bubble and start to feel really isolated when there's an exceptionalism that is really negative around you. So this morning I was talking about the function of the negative narrative that existed around the intervention, around Aboriginal people in the Northern Territory. And for the most part, that narrative doesn't exist for us. It existed for the rest of the country, so that you would actually tolerate, like I said, the intolerable. So that all of a sudden, you know, these rivers of grog dialogue, these pedophile dialogues, these, you know, this late line program, completely fabricated, I mean, they made it up. He was some advisor's, some minister's, Malbruff's advisor, and never stepped foot in Woodajooloo, but Gregory Andrews. And so what we're going to talk about is some of the lies and how they've been constructed and what the purpose of them is. So, but before we get there, we'll just tell a couple of stories. So, I've been a teacher for a long time, so I was teaching a workshop up in Top End, and do you know, it happened really quickly. So the Little Children of Sacred report is released. They miraculously have this, 320-page piece of legislation that doesn't mention children. But what it mentions is all of these really, really draconian, really punitive laws that are put on only for Aboriginal people. The Racial Discrimination Act is suspended. All of these things seemed like they weren't possible to do. Malbruff comes out, John Howard comes out, and then the next thing we know, civil liberties are out the door, human rights are out the door, and there's this kind of roll-on. So when I said the Australian government sent the Australian Army into Australian Aboriginal communities, I wasn't lying. So I was up in Top End and we were doing a workshop and everyone was like, communities had started to scatter. It felt like there was going to be another mass removal event. And, I mean, that did happen later, but it felt like there was going to be another mass removal event. The way that they'd couched all of the language was around these sexual health checks of 6-year-olds, which is, do you know, to announce what is an abuse in such a way without any kind of fear. So there was a court action that stopped that from happening. Yeah, from all the health departments. They were just like that's literal abuse. You can't do that. So they pulled back on that angle. And I was just going to tell this story about, I was doing it was a public communication class, but there was an old lady in there called Mavis, and she was a teacher out in Yolngu country, on Top End. So North Force came in, and the army rolled in, and they went to go into her classroom, and she just point blank refused to let them in. And she was like, "You're just not coming in here." And she grabbed the North Force young fella, and she pushed him out, and she grabbed a switch, and she just stripped it. And she picked it up, and she looked at them all. And she's like, "You're not coming into my classroom, and those children are not going with you. So understand that." North Force ran away. They're like, "Don't even mess with her. She will bust you up." And the Australian Army stood there for a minute, and they were like, the soldiers, because then they were alone, and they all, as individuals, had a choice to make if they were going to force this issue or if they were going to see reason and sense in that minute. And she stood her ground, and those two men turned and walked away because they didn't want to get whipped, and she would have whipped them. She wasn't playing. She said, it was very firm and clear, "You're not coming into my classroom. Those children are not going with you. So we've got a decision to make right here and now. Go back. We're having a community meeting. You go back and you have your meeting with your bosses. I'm going back, have my meeting with my bosses, and we'll meet back here tomorrow." And they did. They're two individuals, and we all have an individual kind of responsibility to play in terms of the decisions that we make. But the collective, there was no hesitation whatsoever about just suspending that Racial Discrimination Act. You jump in any time. I'll keep going. Yeah. All of a sudden, everyone who was on Centrelink had half their payments suspended. And then this was before the new card, the basics card, didn't work anywhere in town. Like the second-hand shops closed down because the cinema suffered. All of the infrastructure of the town wasn't equipped for such a, violent and sudden kind of rollout of... So people lost half of their income. we lost the ability to, implement a permit system. That was certainly threatened. White people did not like being told that there were places that they couldn't go into without asking permission. And it was a real stickling point. They're like, what do you mean, Nicholas Rothwell from The Australian? What do you mean I can't go out there and write any story I want to write? What are you hiding? Well, we're not hiding. We're protecting our children from people like you, like we've always done. And so there were so many layers to how it happened. And I guess and the other layer to how it happened was, Nanette Rogers. So she rolled out. If that woman waited 3 years to get her PhD before releasing any of that information, if that's true, she should be charged. If she sat on that level of information that she had in this big explosive interviews to get her PhD before she said it, she should be charged. That should be criminal, because you don't get your PhD and then go, oh, here, look how salacious these little details are. So, but it wasn't just Nanette Rogers. It was a whole system-wide attack on Aboriginal men predominantly, and it was designed to demonise us so that everybody else could feel okay about what was happening here. Now, we only have a couple of mechanisms in Australia to protect human rights, and we only have it through legislation. So the suspension of the one piece of legislation that says you can't discriminate on the basis of race should never, ever be underestimated, what that has done to the psyche of the country and to, how do you recover from that? And it's normalised now. Everyone goes, the intervention, you're still talking about it. Like it wasn't some kind of really sick social experiment, and like it wasn't some kind of really determined. And it goes back to culturally and linguistically strong that I said at the beginning. So these sites of real strength, I guess it's the same thing. They're just too strong for you. So there was a very concerted effort to remove that strength, to undermine that strength, to really damage and hurt a people so that there wasn't this kind of opposition to them. So it was so coordinated, it was not funny, and they'd had it all written out, had it all ready. It's not based on the Little Children of Sacred Report at all. It doesn't refer to children. It was planned, it was ready, and they thought that this was going to be a major election winner for them. And it turned out, it was quite popular with the Australian populace. Oh, good Lord, none of us knew how bad it was up there. Oh, good Lord, what's going on up there? Oh, good Lord. Look what, you'd think it was another country. And so off the machine went and in the intervention rolled. And there's lots and lots of stories of strength and survival. You want to have a go?
And thank you all for being here. So just to add to what Kathryn is saying also is that when you look at the Australian Constitution, it actually says, a bit section in there around special measures, and that's what old Johnny and his little boy Mel and their government at the time in 2007, when they brought the intervention into the territory, was that we'll use this as a measure to save, a special measure to save Aboriginal people and to save our children, their children. And but what we'll do first is we'll make amendments to the Racial Discrimination Act, so we can only put a law just on a group of people of colour And those people of colour were Aboriginal people living in town camps in our major town centres, homelands, our own traditional homelands, our lands, and our communities, 73 of them right through the Northern Territory. So when Kathryn was talking about income management, they also made amendments to the Social Securities Act so they'd be able to manage our welfare payments. At that time it was 50% on the basic card. But before even the basic card came out, we were given gift cards so we could only shop at Coles or Woolworths at the time. And then, with those aspects of the legislation, Kathryn says 300 pages, but it was in fact 700.
Okay, yep.
300, I think, was the Little Children of Sacred Report. But the history goes back to Nanette Rogers making all of these claims on child sexual abuse because she was a child magistrate in the Alice Springs court here, and just probably repeated stories that she put forward to the media, and that triggered those newspaper articles and those media things on TV and everything like that. It also triggered the Little Children of Sacred Report, and that was led by Pat Anderson and Rex Wild, QC, and they did their inquiry right through the Northern Territory, and then handed it into the NT government. NT government at the time actually sat on it. So Johnny and his little boy, they all decided, let's do something about the Aboriginal children in the Northern Territory. So they brought the intervention in. Just in one night, it was passed through the lower house, the House of Reps, and through the Senate. And when they announced that, they said the army was going to come in and check all our children, do the compulsory health checks. We're going to have the rights to take over your buildings in our communities. We got rights to take over our town camps and our communities and our homeland. We got statutory rights over computers. We're going to take over the stores so, better foods and products can be sold in our stores. And then
The big blue and white signs?
Big blue and white signs costed over basically over $80,000 to put up in just outside a community or outside our town camps. And then on the media, they were saying, we're going to, get the assistance from the Australian Army. Well, being a mother at the time and my oldest child being 5 or 6, it made me frightened that, I wrapped all my sons and daughters and nieces and nephews in cotton wool and always kept them safe, put food on the table, kept a roof over their head and clothes on their backs and a bed to sleep at night and a safe place to be. And the fear that it put in me is like, all of the hard work that I've done to keep my children with me is going to go out the door, because at the time I was deemed as an unfit mother. My brothers and partner, fathers and uncles were deemed as pedophiles at the time. And then all of our children had been raped by all of these Aboriginal men while all these rivers of grog were flowing into our communities, our town camps and homeland. And I was like, sorry to excuse the language, but what the fuck? I'm going to fucking lock my gate and I'm going to lock the main gate to my camp. No cunts coming in here and take them like you. That's exactly how I felt, and that's what I said. So I said, you've got to lock your gates and we're going to lock the main gate to our camp and everyone can just stand outside. They're not coming into Mount Answer, or into my yard. And in that same time, I was feeling like that, and grandmothers and mothers, aunties, nieces and nephews, and families that were living in remote communities at the time, what they were doing is they were going further into the bush, into their homelands. And if there was on their homeland, they were even going further into the bush. So they were actually living on country until it was safe to come back into their community. So yes, a lot of Aboriginal organisations stood up against this. So since then, the announcement, there was a contingent that went down to Canberra to go and lobby against the intervention and how bad it was going to be. But the best thing that ever happened that year in 2007 is that we had an election. They thought that they were doing the best thing for Aboriginal people in the Northern Territory and used that as an election stunt and a Trojan horse to come into our communities. But at the same time, they lost. They lost to the Australian public. Johnny and his boy and his parties at the time, and they lost their government in 2007. So Kevin Rudd come along. Oh, he had Auntie Jenny. So Kevin Rudd came on. Jenny Macklin then was our Indigenous Affairs Minister, and what she did was partially reinstate the Racial Discrimination Act so that everybody, no matter what colour you are, if you are on a Centrelink payment and living in the Northern Territory, whether it be in a proscribed area or our town centres, you're going to be income managed. Oh, well. For me, I live in a prescribed area. I can't get exemption because I've got children and my children need to go to school and they need food on the table. Meanwhile, there are other families that may be struggling more than what I'm doing at the time. They were exempt, but they were still struggling families. There were people just flooding Centrelink lines about being exempt from income management. And then on top of that, when she passed, so when Johnny and his little boy, they put the intervention in place in the Territory, it was only for 5 years. 5 years only. Then Auntie Jenny come in and she put Stronger Futures in place. Stronger Futures to make Aboriginal people stronger. But that didn't happen. Well, the intervention was supposed to save our lives, stop child abuse, stop the rivers of grog going into our communities, stop family violence, ban people from buying alcohol. Well, people already know prohibition doesn't work for anybody. What they need is support. And a lot of people were calling out for support prior the intervention in 2007. You can jump into, but I'll just give my spiel. Yeah. And so when Stronger Futures come in, Stronger Futures was only supposed to be around for 10 years. That they legislated 10 years. Well, we are still living under the intervention and we are still living under Stronger Futures. So when all of this happened in 2007, there were a lot of people that had come in to the Territory, extra bureaucrats for income management so they can go into communities to start income managing people and changing the system over. There was a lot of extra police brought into the Territory at the time. But now, you know what, Northern Territory is the territory that has more police than any state or even the ACT. You see them walking around here, man, they're like 2x2 or 4x4 walking around town here, or even on their motorbikes, their horses, their Segways. We got the biggest piggery, I'm very sorry, but here in the Northern Territory, But there are some good cops, there are some bad cops.
It's hard to describe.
Yep.
Like, literally there were thousands of people that were brought in.
Yep.
They rented out whole apartment blocks just for Centrelink workers, just to rotate them. Whole other in a place that already had housing shortages. for the police, for all on rotation. So, it was hysterical, absolutely hysterical. There was just this flooding of people making so much money. It cost so much money.
Over 700 billion.
Yeah. They were doing things like, should we ban SBS in Alice Springs? Because of, there might be a sex scene on there. Do you know what I mean? It had gone to this furthest point where it was completely insane. And if you look at the UN definition of apartheid, Alice Springs and Tennant Creek meet 7 of the 9 determinants. Just in terms of there are 2 laws in this town. I can do things that Barb just cannot do.
And we're both Aboriginal women.
Yep.
But also on top of that, they started talking about closing the gap. So, 2007, Kevin Rudd and his party, they started to then adopt the terminology of closing the gap from Oxfam. Oxfam ran a campaign in closing the gap for everyone, but they decided, let's take it on, because these statistics are true, but how much of it that we can help our Aboriginal fellow peoples. So, to this day, out of the 19 targets of closing the gap, only 2. 2 out of 19 that are on track for closing the gap. Everything else is just fallen through the gaps. So when we talked about all of the extra staff that have come in to the territory under the intervention, more had come in for the Stronger Future. So over 5 years, 10 years, over $700 billion spent on trying to fix my life, trying to make me a better person.
How many dollars did you see?
Well, my income management, what was income management? So I didn't see the half of my income management because, at the time being a mother and stay-at-home mother, my income was 50%. And then I was like, how come I'm getting short pay from Centrelink? But it was all going into an income management bucket, and that's where it is now. But since then, we've gone from store cards to the basic card. And the best one yet, we got to thank old Uncle Twiggy Forrest for this one. The Inju card and the smart card. But I love this one. With the basic card, I can't buy cigarettes. I can't buy alcohol. I can't even do any of that kind of stuff. I can't go buy pornography. I can't even buy cards with that. But I can go to the shop today with my smart card and my Inju card. I can go buy alcohol over the counter as long as I got a meal, and I can go buy smokes. Why? Because we got the chip on it. So we can do anything with that card. So what's another cause of domestic violence these days? Is financial violence. So we've got the Inju card, we had basic card to stop domestic violence, so the husband wouldn't take our money, my money. It'd be all locked up in Centrelink under the income management bucket. Today, it just gets automatically split. But it's not 50-50 like income management before. It's actually 80-20. So 80% goes on the Inju card or the smart card, while the other 80% goes into, 80% goes into the Inju card and the smart card, while 20% goes in your bank. And I was like, So I can go buy smokes and alcohol with my bank account, my key card. Same time I can go buy extra alcohol and smokes with my other card. So it hasn't stopped family violence. It hasn't stopped our children, our families eating healthy. You can buy a lot of stuff online with those cards as well. And what's happening these days since the intervention is that a lot of our children are now walking around as if, with guns, as in gangs, and also ordering weapons online. So we're working on that. It was supposed to stop overcrowding. The intervention, it hasn't stopped no overcrowding. So everyone now, at the start of Stronger Futures, Auntie Jenny goes, oh, you know what, every family should have a house because the universal family is entitled to have a house. Every child has a room. Every member in a family should have a room and a nice place. What you got? Who you got living in your house? How many families you got in your house today?
5.
Yep. So these days, like it was before the intervention, more than 2 generations in a house, more than 4 to 5 families living in a house, depending on what kind of house you've got and how many bedrooms. But that just still doesn't stop the overcrowding. To this day, we're still living like that.
I don't think it was designed to. Like, I really don't think that they thought that was what was going to happen. Because they flooded, like I said before, all of the workers came in and they just took all of the, available apartments and just bulk booked them out. There was no new housing being built out of it. So it was always like, say, Utopia, oh, no, it's too hard to get a house here. It costs too much. Police station went up overnight.
8 million.
Police station went up overnight. Community manager's house, because now you've got to have a community manager too. Yep. They went up overnight.
So this police station where Kathryn is talking about, it cost $8 million. And it's in the middle of nowhere, or not so much nowhere, but in the middle of 16 homelands east on the Sandover Highway. That one police officer has to go between all the 16 homelands, right up to Mbladowitz, and then Lake Nash, where where she's got family ties to. So there are a lot of police stations out there that are empty because they promised us a policeman in every, or police lady, police persons, in every community to help our communities work on community safety. But reality, that's not happening. You want to talk about health?
Oh, where's Hillary? Hillary did a really good paper on, I think it was like 10 or 12 years after the intervention start, and how every single metric had gotten much worse. Because the thing is, what did they think was going to happen when you completely disempower a whole population? It happened at the same time as super shires were created. Yeah. So at the same time, there was just this whole... So, like, the little local government authorities, the old people still had a say in how the community was managed. Okay. Yeah. And then that was all collapsed down into these big super shires, which were often removed out of community and in the town centres. So then all of a sudden, the local government, which is made up of 2 people from each outstation, no one asks them. No one can, they don't have any say anymore. And at the same time, it's rolled in. So how long you guys been here?
3 days.
Is it what? What day is it? I've been travelling so much. I'm so sorry. What day? It's Saturday. Well, I hope you're here for Monday, Tuesday, because there's nothing going to be open. That started at when Stronger Futures was supposed to end. So it's really... The thing that I was saying this morning is we think that it's normal. We act like it's normal now because it's just been here for so long, and it's just not normal. It's just not normal that a police person can make more money was talking to one man from New Zealand. He was like quite a senior. He makes more money here guarding our bottle shops, stopping someone who's just knocked off from work from getting a six-pack than he was making at home. So that's not my actual point. My actual point... I've lost it now. Yeah, it's not normal because... And it's hard. There were these big signs put out the front of each shop that had that magpie on it. No, this is what it means. Crow. It had the crow on it. And this is these are what these new liquor laws are. This is what this new, liquor law legislation is. And, we've got to have like a reasonable suspicion of you committing a crime. So a reasonable suspicion at the beginning should have, before the intervention was you were acting suspiciously running away from something. You were doing something that made the police think that you were in the process of committing a crime. With these new rollout of the laws, just not having a private address. If you live in a town camp or in a community, if you got black skin, it's that simple. You would be denied. And so these children, when I said earlier, there are no children in the Northern Territory, in Alice Springs and Tennant Creek, who haven't grown up under this. And it's so... Like, they were... At the start, the police were at the start of the shops when you walked in. What are you buying? I haven't even gotten to the bottle shop yet. Do you know what I mean? Like... And, seeing just the disempowerment that happened, I guess, is what I'm saying. And just the town became like a bit of a tinderbox too. And then it was supposed to be over July last year. It was like, this is it. We've seen out the 10 years of Stronger Futures. It was, what date? It was like early July. This is it. It's over. I kept saying to people, it's over now. Yeah, no, it was 10 years. It should have been over July last year. And they just made it worse. They doubled down. So it's not even like you can just blame Howard and Bruff because the other side hasn't been any kinder at all. They opened up one bottle shop without police for one day. And everyone was like, all right, well, here's my chance. After almost 17 years of being rejected at the shop. No. There was a little bit of thieving. And now that we've got Mondays and Tuesdays shut. Now we've got, even reduced hours. We've got, except when Finker's on. Because when Finker's on and all of the tourists come in, honestly, I walked into my local shop, Flynn Drive, and I saw this man stagger out with a trolley full of grog. He staggered into someone else's car. He was blind drunk. And that policeman's like, you have a great time. I was like, what the actual? Are you even going to pull him up? Like, he's getting into a car. A trolley full of grog. You have a great time out there, mate. Yet you can't buy a six-pack if you live at a town camp. So this is literally what apartheid laws are. I can go in, I can buy it. I own my own home. I've got all of this fair skin privilege, and I've got a certain privilege that I tell them off. But there's not many people that can actually get away with it. Because they have all of the power, all of the control. And to my point, it's just not normal. It doesn't happen anywhere else. Canberra's the pornography capital of the whole country. And any one of us can go in there and buy a trolley full of grog. And because it's nobody's business. Why are we even asked now, since Stronger Futures was supposed to end? Who are you drinking with? I can push back, but no one else can really. It's hard to describe the demoralising kind of effect of it. But I'll also say our people are very clever. There are ways around everything. So they think that they've got it, but there are always ways around everything. Because prohibition doesn't work. Is there any questions about how much do you guys know? How much did you, outside of Lateline and Auntie Rose getting up and just saying, I am not the problem, there's this kind of schism that happens. So, she got up and she just named it. She was like, no, Peter Coleman, when you're talking about assimilation, the problem doesn't sit with me, it sits with you, so own it. At the same time as Lateline was happening, at the same time as Sunrise is sitting there, as New South Wales is about to reduce the length of time that it takes to have an adoption if your child has been removed from 3 years to 18 months. So if your child is taken out of the home, you have to go through the court systems to get them back. To reduce it from 3 years, because once they're adopted, they're gone from you forever. It's just insane. It's called kidnapping in any other context. So Sunrise goes and has that ridiculous, national television again. Oh, don't you let anyone say it's the stolen generations again. There's three sort of clowns on this panel, and they're laughing. They're laughing. They think it's funny. They're laughing about these levels of child removal, just making it harder for parents to get their children back. They think it's funny. They're cracking jokes. Kerry-Ann Kennelly on Channel 10, in literal reaction to 50, 60,000 people marching in Melbourne. In literal reaction, they don't care about the kid that's being raped in the outback. Now, we all know where she's talking about when she says that. There's no censorship on her. There was such pushback on both of those cases. So this is why resistance matters. There was such pushback in both of those cases that they had to withdraw those statements. But everything has a function. And in the Northern Territory, I feel like all of the stories that were created about Aboriginal men, about Aboriginal people, about Aboriginal mothers, they were just created because if you guys knew, if everyone in the East Coast just saw a single glimmer of the strength that Auntie Rose had when she got up, I feel like there would have been a popular uprising, maybe like even a revolution. I personally, it's just my feelings, I don't know. I think if we'd had an ATSIC-like body, like a national representative kind of body, it would never have gotten passed. But somehow they snuck these laws through and they just refused to let them go.
And with these laws, they started talking about having human rights scrutiny committees to look at and go through legislation.
Yeah.
So they then started to have scrutiny committees so they can go through legislations that only affect Aboriginal people, both here in the Territory as well as Commonwealth or federal government. But when you look at Kathryn as an Aboriginal woman and me as an Aboriginal woman, yeah, we're both Aboriginal and we're proud of it, but one has more advantages than the other. But what's more sad is that our families that live in remote communities, they have it more worse.
Way worse.
Way worse. So
it creates this really unequal kind of,
Yep. So with us, it created different, groups of society. Us that live in our town centres, us that live in, Darwin metropolitan areas around the country, and then it's those that are more worse off than us. I stood up against the intervention because I knew no one else would. No one would stand up against the federal government for making these punitive measures into law that would affect me and my daughters and my children, my families, or my 80-year-old grandfather that lives on his traditional country. But at the same time, my house here in Alice Springs, I just recently got a rebuild. A house that was a year younger than me, that I'd lived in for so long, over so many years. My father lived there with his grandmother, and his sisters and his 3 older children. And I lived in that house with my children. My brother had lived in that house with his children and his family. And so now we've got rebuilds happening in our town camps. In remote communities, they starting to get rebuilds, or what is Uncle Steve calling it? Room to breathe. Room to breathe is just adding on a room, or turning a veranda into a room. That is what we call these days in the territory is room to breathe. So you could turn my patio or whatever and my veranda into an extra room somewhere, because then that makes out that I've got room to put a family in. Meanwhile, I've got families that's occupying, different family members occupying different rooms in my house. And that's what's happening in remote communities. They are building better, they say, bigger and better homes, but they're actually building bigger rooms for a growing family that's already got a room in your house. So since the intervention, what I've done is I've travelled overseas 5 times to talk about the rights of, standing up for our people and what we're doing in what the governments, both federal and the territory governments, are doing to Aboriginal people.
Incredible.
And I'd just like to put a shout out to my daughter. She's also doing the same. Connie! Yay! She's also doing the same. She's going to Bangkok this year to talk about youth violence, and stand up and show them your jumper, baby. Youth matters! That's one of the projects that she's doing with her group. So, and then we started talking, and Alice Springs was known as the murder capital of the world, or Australia, or how women were dying at the hands of Aboriginal men, and our children were being removed because of, they can't have a bed to sleep at night, or they're being abused by their family members. So, growing up teaching my kids about, stranger danger, I had to teach my kids and my families how to start observing behaviour, because that's how we're going to find out. And so within that, Tangentyere Council, my organisation, who is a service provider for our town camps, and as well as does a lot of other stuff in this town to help this town. We have to struggle against the racist element in Alice Springs. Like you've already seen it everywhere on social media. There's stuff happening in this town. Your car's getting stolen and driven around town. Your home's getting broken into. Young people are walking around with weapons, machetes, iron bars. There are gangs fighting against one another. There are alcoholics on the street that are spilling out of the pubs having violent family feuds. Yeah, that does happen. But there is an underlying issue below that. And the arrogance of people around Australia that does not know an Aboriginal person personally who lives this, will understand. But those that don't know an Aboriginal person but can see everything that's happening with Aboriginal people in my town, oh yeah, must be all the Aboriginal people are like that, man. I'm not going to Alice Springs anymore. It's really unsafe to go there. You know, I like to go to Alice Springs, but oh my goodness, it's really, really unsafe. But yet, we can have the Pink Desert Race where we get international people coming just so they can race on the dirt track all the way to Apachula. We have the Nats car in here, which is Adam Giles' baby that was born out of the Country Liberals, the Northern Territory Country Liberal Party, when they were in power. Money wasted there. That's not saving our children, and it's not saving our men, women, and helping our people in the communities. What else do we have? We had the Masters Games. Oh, my goodness. I'm 50, so I think I'm in that category now of playing one sport in the Masters Games. But yeah, I was told in those baskets, those bags you get at when you're in the Masters Games, you get a little information pack about Alice Springs. Not the positive things about going sightseeing or anything like that. Oh, you got to keep your bag close to you. Make sure you don't leave your belongings out there. Or don't go approaching people. You know, so what we did as Tangentyere and under our social services department, we created the Tangentyere Family Safety Group. And out of that, it was our Tangentyere town camp women who wanted to do something about domestic violence in our town camps. You know, there was men's behaviour change program. And if you just turn around and see Tommy over there, Tommy, you want to stand up, please? Love you so much. He works with our... put your hands together, give Tommy a shout. Hey! He works with our men on our town camps who want to make a change for their families because they know if they keep beating their wives, their children, they're going to go to jail and their children will grow up having no fathers. So he's teaching our men to become better fathers. You have people like Connie who's running the Future Yayas and teaching our young girls and our young women to break the cycle of violence. And we got our young Kuhlman's program where we're teaching our children are having children. So we're teaching our children how to be mothers and our fathers how to be fathers. So we are trying to now break the cycle of domestic violence, of stopping our children from being taken away, stopping our, men folk in our communities being incarcerated. We're trying to change their lives so they can better their lives for the future of our next generation after this. So we are trying to make a difference, our organisation. But the only thing is, this is right across the Northern Territory. So, as a founder of Aboriginal Housing NT, also set up during the, post-intervention, is that a lot of our, Kathryn talked about a lot of our Indigenous organisations being scrapped. Well, our housing organisations through the Northern Territory also was abolished. So then we used to, back then we used to pay rent to an Aboriginal housing organisation, but that got scrapped. And then Stronger Futures then handed all responsibility of housing over to the Northern Territory government. And so now, to this day, the Northern Territory government is our landlord. So if I got any problems, back then, if I had a problem with my door, I'd just ring my local organisation, they'd send somebody out to fix it. Today, my door handle won't get fixed that day like it did back then. Today, I have to report to an organisation. This organisation has to report to Darwin. Darwin then has to look at the problem and see if there's money that they've got there to come and fix my door. They come back to that organisation. That organisation then has to go to a tender, to a carpenter, a company, contractor. Then that contractor then comes to my house. So we jump through more hoops today than what we did back then. And I live in Alice Springs in a town camp. You just think about our family that lives in remote communities.
You can wait years.
Yep, up to 6 months to a year or even more to get a door handle fixed, to get a window fixed. Meanwhile, climate change is real and it is happening today. We freeze in the winter, we sweat in the summer. And our houses aren't built for those two climates anymore because of climate change.
We've been told to wrap it up, but we're going to demand 5 minutes for questions if you want to, and I'm going to hold these up.
By the way, this is my baby. This is my little one. This is my second baby. She was there. She was like 2 years old when the intervention came in. She's 21 this year and she still has no rights.
So these are little fact booklets that have been produced by
the group that was established back in 2007, the Intervention Rollback Action Group. Some of our members are here, or they might have gone. But my daughter Connie, she actually grew up with our group. So she lived the intervention all my life and she knows how to stand up for her rights because of me. That's her mother's daughter over there. But also on top of that, there was papers that was handed out. That's on your chair. You want to explain those?
We've got one question here. And there's a book called This Is What We Know. That should also, and that was created at the beginning of it. And then there's another one, which is... Okay, go to the question.
Yes, give me one of those papers then. Please and thank you. Oh, thank you. That came from you. You can explain that. Remember we talked about it?
Yep. Okay. Thank you, Auntie Kathryn and Auntie Bob, for the wonderful educational talk.
Oh, hold on a minute. She just wanted to...
Oh, sorry. You go.
You go.
So because of Gaza, the Muslim community in Australia has been organising around changing their vote, right? Because they've historically been very attached to the Labor Party, and that has changed a lot in the last election. I wanted to ask, I know, Annie, Bub, I think you ran with the Greens in 2010. Mm-hmm. What's your vision about politics and the Aboriginal community here in Northern Territory, given you got the numbers to maybe send a big shockwave? What's your vision or thoughts around that?
First and foremost, with the Greens, they were the only party that stood up for us in the Northern Territory against the intervention in 2007. Rachel Seward was the Greens opposition Indigenous Affairs member at the time. When Stronger Futures was announced, Scott Ludlam was acting in Rachel Seward's place at the time because there was a loss in Rachel's family and she couldn't attend Parliament. I was sitting around a fire at like 2:30 in the morning around the fire with my grandfather that I talked about, that's 80 years old, and his wife at the time. And we were just listening to, them having debates about Stronger Futures. It actually got passed just like that. Another one that got passed overnight. But with the Greens, I ran as a candidate for the Greens because they were the only party that stood up that I had seen in my lifetime stand up for Aboriginal people and their rights. So yeah, I stood up against Warren Snowden, who's been a long-time friend of my family's for a long time. For me, I vote Greens, but I'm a seasonal campaigner for Labor. I would prefer to put Labor first in remote communities, because Aboriginal people are actually safe with the Labor Party, but in our town centres, there's a lot of different campaigns. Like we talk a lot about Auntie Natalie talked about the Country Liberal Party. Well, over the years, the Country Libs have always been racist and they've always put us last on the ballot. And they are always making punitive measures and policies, making amendments to bills about us. The recent one is this week, making amendments to the Child Protection Act this week, and that's pretty disgusting. So our mob, as time has gone on, our mob don't vote because they don't know who's going to help them or who's going to protect them. But you're actually better to be safe than sorry and put the Country Liberals last on the ballot paper. Yeah, so, but now, there's a lot of people that want to have their own parties, run as independents or, strengthen the Greens, anti-Greens party up. So, yeah. Does that answer your question? You gotta use the mic. Sorry.
I had the traumatic history of working for Jenny Macklin in those years that you talked about as her advisor, and she ignored everything I had to say about the intervention. And then she wrote about it in her memoirs later and said she regretted it. My point is that when I worked in the Labor Party, every day people would say that Aboriginal people will never vote a different way. They'll always vote for us. So we can just keep going and worrying about what the Murdoch press is going to say tomorrow. And that was very much the attitude it was 20 years ago. I don't know what it's like in there today, but that's the attitude I've seen in relation to Gaza, and probably I'm biased because of that as well. But I just wanted to mention that sometimes you've got to send some shockwaves, even if they're people that you love and that you're close to. You've got to send some shockwaves to an institution for it to feel some pressure and change.
Yeah, well, that's true. But we need to get the right people in there. We need to start strengthening ourselves. Can somebody take a microphone over to Bob there, please?
Oh, Bob.
Also over there with the hand up. He can't walk this way. Give him that one. You get that one.
Thank you, Barb. Can you hear me? Is that
Go like that, Bob.
Is that loud enough?
Thank you.
Okay, I'll try to speak louder. I'm just wondering, Barb, or the other lady there, has any lawyers been looking at whether the John Howard and Al Brough and those people can be taken to the International Criminal Court of Justice, the same way that Netanyahu has been taken to the International Criminal Court of Justice over his treatment of Gaza?
Yes, so the Reverend Janina Gondara and Arnie Rose Kunoth monks, they went to the UN and they petitioned about the intervention, and then the UN Special Rapporteur came here, and we have no treaty, we have no state rights. So the same way that South Africa had to take Israel to the ICC, there's no easy mechanism for them to be accounted for. So people have tried, and maybe it's time to try again. Do you know what I mean? Like, definitely.
And also to add to that, what we did, the Intervention Rollback Action Group, was work with the Human Rights Law Centre and lawyers in Melbourne and Sydney to send an early warning urgent action into the UN through the International Convention on Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination. And that's because of the RDA here in Australia. So that was able to also put the Australian government on notice at the time.
What was his name?
James Anaya. And
scathing.
Yep.
And took it back to the UN.
So I met the Special Rapporteur when I went to New York the first time in 2008 to attend a permanent forum on Indigenous issues. And the whole Aboriginal contingent that went over actually invited him to come over to Australia and look at the conditions of Aboriginal people here in the Territory. So we've had a few rapporteurs come from the UN, and we've also had when I went to Geneva, I spoke to Nabi Pillay, and she was the Human Rights Commissioner at the time, High Commissioner, yep, at the time, and she also came over to Australia, and they both criticised it. We've had a lot of UN people come to Australia, and especially the Northern Territory, and look at the conditions of our people, and then go back to the UN and criticise the Australian government. But yeah, it's like the Australian government goes, "Oh, well, like that to you," you know. So sorry about the finger, but that's how they are. And even though that we're the Australian government is a signatory to 7 international conventions under the UN, we still don't get a look in, and we don't get the help that we need from the UN.
Maybe it's time to try again. So I'm certainly working on, and have been for a little minute, but I just need to get it done, on a paper around, I'm not lying, 7 of the 9 apartheid, what are they called? Definitions or distinctions apply here. And I'll just add one more, which is it's changed now. The world has changed a little bit. Everything has just changed. I feel like the axis has spun so far that it's just felt like upside down world for so long. And maybe, just maybe, now is the time to actually to try again.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Anis. Just on Gregory Andrews, in recent years, he's very much reinvented himself as an activist. I'm just wondering, has he ever given like a full explanation of the role he's played and apologised?
And completely accounted for why and how that happened?
That's the question, yeah.
No.
Okay, well, he's on social media, so everyone just keep asking him and shaming him, and yeah.
I was told that we have to wrap up now, but I just want to let you guys know we've had the just recently we've had the joint steering committee from the lower house and the upper house steering committee on doing the rounds of Australia. And yesterday they came to Alice, and only Natalie already talked about it, mentioned it this morning or not too long ago. So they were doing the rounds on Semitism and racism. So they're looking for submissions. They're looking for people to stand up against the racism in this country. And there is so I would suggest that anyone here that want to stand up with Aboriginal people, stand beside them and fight the fight, walk the walk, put in a submission, and give them recommendations on how this government, federal government, should be behaving and how they should be treating Aboriginal people.
And there's a workshop tomorrow. I want to read this one thing. So I think there's this paper is on the chairs, and I would encourage you all to go and get the facts about the intervention, but I'll just read this one thing, because that's what we're talking about it. The distance between Canberra and the Territory was political and not moral. The paperwork was written here. The humiliation was carried there. That does not make Canberra clean. It makes Canberra responsible.
Hello. I don't have a statement. I just want to say thank you. Oh my God. Powerhouses. Thank you for your knowledge and your work and your friendship. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you so much. All right, the buses are kind of getting ready to go. We've stretched it out a little bit too long, so please start heading over that way. And just a reminder, if you're driving, do everything by the book. Drive really safe, really slow. Don't give cops a reason to give you any hassle. Nah, don't need to pack up. Feel free to just move on out. Legal briefing is at 5:30 tonight at camp, so that's in like 45 minutes. And then we got dinner, and then we got music. It's going to be beautiful. You guys are beautiful. Thank you so much for an amazing day.